Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Okay, happy Friday everybody. I trust you've had a productive week and have a restful weekend ahead. Today's video will be very economy focused, moving through several salient economic updates from the last 24 to 48 hours. Yesterday, Thursday, Beijing published official customs data for trade in November. China's exports were slightly better than expected in the month, rising by 0.5%, but China's imports disappointed in November, dropping by 0.6% from a year earlier, compared to 3% growth in October, suggesting weak domestic demand. In a Thursday note, capital economics analyst Huang said that November's increase in exports was likely driven by price cuts, which, quote, is not sustainable and is negatively affecting firms, end quote. Exports to the US and the EU have fallen by over 10% so far this year, while those to Russia surged 50%. Imports of steel plunged 27% year-to-date, driven by China's ongoing property downturn. Analysts largely agree that China's overall trade outlook remains poor and are arguing whether improvements will be seen next year. Ding Shuang, chief economist for Greater China at Standard Chartered Bank, expressed with the numbers, for example, quote, China's overall trade is still sluggish, and this trend is likely to persist throughout the next year. Net exports are likely to provide a negative contribution to China's economy next year. In contrast, import data will show an upwards sign as domestic demand is becoming a pillar pulling the economy, end quote. Other commentators are less optimistic. Analysts at Nomura observed in a note today, quote, China's exports may still face strong headwinds in 2024. Highly restrictive interest rates across developed markets may finally weigh on the global economy and dampen demand for China's products, end quote. Others share the concern not just on the export side, but on the import side too. Quote, today's trade numbers were pretty bad. The Chinese economy is constrained by weak demand, not weak supply. And so the better-than-expected export numbers simply suggest that Chinese manufacturing competitiveness remains. The import number explains why Chinese manufacturers are competitive rather than efficient. Weak domestic demand in China is partly the consequence of transfers from the household sector that directly and indirectly subsidize the manufacturing sector. Year-to-date, China's exports are 5.5% below last year's over the same period, while imports are 6.1% lower. China's trade surplus year-to-date is $783 billion, 4.5% of China's GDP, compared to last year's $810 billion, end quote. Next up for the economy. With 11.79 million university graduates expected in 2024, 221,000 more than this year, Beijing remains concerned with historically high levels of youth unemployment. This week, the Ministry of Education introduced a variety of measures to facilitate employment and entrepreneurship for these 2024 university graduates. On Wednesday, the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security held a joint conference on the youth unemployment issue for graduates. According to the official readout, the meeting, quote, pointed out the need to expand job positions in private enterprises, increase support for the private economy, persist in reducing burdens, stabilizing jobs, expanding employment, implementing various incentive policies, and improving the competitiveness of job positions in private enterprises, end quote. Beijing understands that youth unemployment, especially educated youth unemployment, presents serious political stability issues, and as such is taking this economic challenge very seriously. Quote, new graduates have had a very hard time finding jobs this year, and there is no good data on how many new graduates actually found jobs since graduating in July. Authorities need to create a lot more jobs Too bad policies in recent years destroyed so many decent private sector jobs. They could really use all those jobs once created by the tutoring industry and platform enterprises." End quote. Bishop here is referring to the crackdowns on technology companies and private education businesses, which for years acted as massive employers to recent graduates. Next up for the economy, a new report published this week by Chinese think tank China Index Academy observes that China's inventory of new homes has climbed significantly, especially in smaller cities where it will take more than 2 years to sell them as the property slump gets worse. According to data released by China Index Academy, new homes in 3rd and 4th tier cities took on average 26.3 months to sell as of the end of October, up from less than 20 months in July. In first-tier cities, the destocking time rose from 11 months in July to 12.7 months by the end of October. Chinese financial media outlet Caixin, writing on this report, expressed yesterday, quote, "Developers sharply reduced prices of new homes in 3rd and 4th-tier cities, but still could not attract buyers. The decline in China's home sales accelerated in November as buyers remained wary. The value of new home sales among the biggest 100 real estate companies fell 29.6% from a year earlier to 390 billion yuan, $54.6 billion US, according to preliminary data from China Real Estate Information Corp. In 3rd and 4th tier cities, new home sales by floor area declined 32% in November from the previous year." End quote. Next up, Beijing is very unhappy with Moody's. Hey everyone, if you're enjoying today's episode of China Update, if you're getting some value from the episode, I have a huge favor to ask. I rely on people who enjoy the episode subscribing and hitting the like button in order to grow. As the channel grows, I can put more resources into it, and my hope is that I can do this one day as my full-time job and increase the size and the quality of these episodes. And for those who want to help keep the channel financially sustainable, Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. This channel is primarily subscriber supported and not reliant on corporations, and I want to keep it that way. Thank you so much everybody for the ongoing support. Next up, we continue to see fallout from this week's move from international ratings agency Moody's decision to cut China's credit outlook to negative. We remember Moody's on Tuesday lowered its outlook on China's credit rating to negative from stable and kept its A1 investment grade rating on the country, which it hasn't changed since 2017. The credit rater said that the growing debt problems of some cities and provinces would force China's central government to provide financial support as economic growth is slowing. One analyst called the cut a sign of the beginning of the end of China's debt-fueled growth model and heralds China's debt reckoning. To follow up on the Tuesday cut, the following day on Wednesday, Moody's Investors Service Inc. also cut its outlook for 8 Chinese banks to negative from stable. The rating move was for financial institutions including Industrial and Commercial Bank of China Limited and the China Development Bank, and was, quote, primarily driven by the change in outlook to negative from stable on the government's credit ratings, end quote. Moody's also cut its outlook on Hong Kong, citing reduced autonomy since the imposition of the national security law, and Macau, and placed 26 Chinese local government financing vehicles on review for downgrade. The Hong Kong government said that Moody's had made, quote, unfounded comments, unquote. Unsurprisingly, Beijing is not happy about any of this and continues to hit back. State-run Global Times published a piece yesterday called "Moody's Politically Biased Credit Outlook Cut Won't Affect China's Long-Term Upward Growth Trend," writing, quote, "We shouldn't take Moody's credit rating seriously." Dong Xiaopeng, a senior research fellow at the Chongyang Institute for Financial Studies under the Renmin University of China, says, "It's widely known that the US firm's credit rating on China and Chinese companies are politically biased. Moreover, Moody's rating system has limitations as it lacks dynamic research and in-depth understanding of China's economic development and governance model," Dong said, end quote. The pushback from China generally follows this theme. Moody's just doesn't understand the Chinese economy. This will be a very familiar argument to any foreigner who has lived in China for some time. You just don't understand China. Feng Qiaobin, a deputy director for macroeconomic research at the department under the State Council, for example, expressed to state media this week, quote, "The rating agency's understanding of how the Chinese economy works and how the Chinese government functions is not deep enough, and, as such, does not reflect reality," end quote. One issue with this "you don't understand China" argument is that Moody's Investors Service has teams of Chinese and international experts in both Beijing and Hong Kong. These are not Anglo-centric analysts sitting in London or New York. Indeed, today, UK-based The Financial Times reports that Moody's Investors Service advised staff in China to work from home ahead of its cut to the outlook of the country's sovereign credit rating. Quote, "A suggestion staff believed was prompted by concern over Beijing's possible reaction, according to two employees familiar with the situation." End quote. The move by the US ratings agency, quote, "highlights the unease of many foreign companies doing business in the world's second-largest economy, where some have suffered police raids, exit bans for staff, and arrests amid tensions between China and the US and its allies." End quote. "They didn't give us the reason, but everyone knows why," said one China-based Moody's employee, the outlet reports, referring to the request to work from home. The staff member also told the Financial Times that Moody's had advised analysts in Hong Kong to temporarily avoid travel to the Chinese mainland ahead of the cut. Quote, "Pushback from the People's Republic of China's side has been fast and furious. They may be justifiably worried that Moody's shift is more ammunition for financial firms that are on the fence about maintaining or reducing investments into China, and it makes Xi Jinping economic thought look bad. Given the intensifying moves to build a financial system with Chinese characteristics, would it be surprising to start hearing that Moody's and other big ratings firms are hegemonic financial tools of the US?" End quote. The statement was made by Bishop early Thursday morning. Then, several hours later, Hong Kong's second highest official, Eric Chan, said that Moody's Hong Kong outlook cut was just another example of, quote, "the West always looking for opportunities to smear Hong Kong and the mainland, attempting to suppress the development of the mainland through Hong Kong," end quote, adding, quote, "its sole purpose is to use Hong Kong as a means of suppressing the country's development. This is very obvious," end quote. This sort of statement would be expected from the mainland, but it's frankly incredible to hear it from a top official in Hong Kong, especially towards a reputable international ratings agency. This is not the sort of language which helps improve shaken international investor and business confidence in the city. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much everybody for watching. Have a good Friday, have a restful weekend, and I will see you all tomorrow.